Sharing food and kissing are among the signals babies use to interpret their social world according to a new study. Learning to navigate social relationships is a skill that is critical for surviving in human societies. And so for babies and young children, that means learning who they can count on to take care of them. Now, MIT neuroscientists have now identified a specific signal that young children and even babies use to determine whether two people have a strong relationship and a mutual obligation to help each other. Now, whether those two people kiss, share food, or have other interactions that involve sharing saliva, these are the cues that they look out for. And so in a new study, the researchers showed that babies expect people who share saliva to come to one another's aid when one person is in distress, much more so than when people share toys or interact in other ways that do not involve saliva exchange. Now, these findings suggest that babies can use these cues to try to figure out who around them is most likely to offer help, the researchers say. Interesting, right? Now, babies don't know in advance which relationships are the close and morally obligating ones. So, they have some way of learning this by looking at what happens around them. And this was said by Rebecca Sachs, the John W. Jebb Professor of Brain and Cognitive Sciences, who happens to be a member of MIT's McGovern Institute of Brain Research and the Center for Brains, Minds and Machines, CBMM, and the senior author of the new study. MIT postdoc Ashley Thomas, who is also affiliated with the CBMM, is the lead author of the study, which appears in Science Studies. Brandon Wu, a Harvard University graduate, Dana Nettle, a professor of behavioral science at Newcastle University, and Elizabeth Spelker, professor of psychology at Harvard and CBMM member, are also authors of the particular paper. Now, in human societies, people typically distinguish between thick and thin relationships. Now, thick relationships usually found between family members, right, feature strong levels of attachment, obligation, and mutual responsiveness. Anthropologists have also observed that people in thick relationships are more willing to share bodily fluids, such as saliva. That inspired both the question of whether infants distinguish between those types of relationships and whether saliva sharing might be a really good cue they could use to recognize them. And so to study those questions, researchers observed toddlers between 16.5 months to 18.5 months and babies 8.5 to 10 months as they watch interactions between human actors and puppets. In the first set of experiments, a puppet shared an orange with one actor, then tossed the ball back and forth with a different actor. Now, after the children watched these initial interactions, the researchers observed that children's reactions when the puppet showed distress while sitting between the two actors. Now, based on an earlier study of non-human primates, the researchers hypothesized that babies would look first at the person whom they expected to help. Now, that study showed that when baby monkeys cried, other members of the troop looked to the baby's parent as if expecting them to step in. The MIT team found that the children were more likely to look toward the actor who had shared food with the puppet, not the one who had shared a toy when the puppet was in distress. Isn't that interesting? Now let's look at the second set of experiments that we've done. Now this second set of experiments was designed to focus more specifically on saliva. The actor either placed a finger in her mouth and then into the mouth of the puppet, or placed her finger on her forehead and then onto the forehead of the puppet. Later, when the actor expressed distress while standing between the two puppets, children watching the video were more likely to look towards the puppet with whom she had shared saliva. The findings suggest that saliva sharing is likely an important cue that helps infants to learn about their own social relationships and those of people around them. And so the general skill of learning about social relationships is very useful. Thomas says one reason why this distinction between thick and thin might be important for infants in particular, especially human infants who depend on adults for longer than many other species, is that it might be a good way to figure out who else can provide the support that they depend on to survive. And so the researchers did their first set of studies shortly before COVID-19 lockdown began with babies who came to the lab with their families. Now later experiments were done over Zoom. The results that researchers saw were similar before and after the pandemic, confirming that pandemic-related hygiene concerns did not affect the outcome. That means the reason why the children could trust like that had nothing to do with pandemic. And so in future work, the researchers hope to perform similar studies with infants in cultures that have different types of family structures. Now, in adult subjects, they plan to use functional magnetic resonance imaging, that's fMRI, to study what parts of the brain are involved in making saliva-based assessment about social relationships. So this tells you that kissing your baby on the forehead can actually help your baby trust you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.